we have our industry expert, Dr. Gurpinder Dhillon, Head of Data and AI Ecosystem, Senzing, who will be talking about our topic, Confident and Wrong, Why Identity Resolution is the Missing Foundation for Agentic AI. Please give Dr. Gurpinder a round of applause.
Thank you, Neha.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. I know this room is a little warm, and I was warned that you're going to be presenting in a sauna, so I hope they fix it for tomorrow, at least for people that are going to be in this room. Okay. Can you see the slides? Perfect. So we're going to be talking about confident and wrong, and I picked this title because I speak to a lot of organizations. I've been in this data and AI space for decades, and over this time, I've spoken to a lot of organizations that were struggling first with data and now with AI. Over the last couple of years, the move has been, especially with the ChatGPT coming and becoming a bit mainstream, it has been, okay, how do we leverage AI, agentic AI, and all these variations to work for us so that we can be effective in our decision-making and our business operations? But the problem that I'm coming across more and more these days is that the companies that have this going on, they're struggling to see value out of it. And what's actually has happened is AI has become so strong that it is making confident, wrong decisions. So how do we prevent that? And what I mean by that is I think all of you have seen, use ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, and seen it give you a response where it's very confident that, hey, this is the right response. But when you peel the layers, you understand this is not what I was hoping for, or this is not the right response. It's hallucinating, it's making stuff up. So the same is happening in the business context as well. So let me start with this one example, and this is a real example with the bank that I was working with. They implemented agentic AI, and the idea was that we're going to set up this agent that is going to help us make decisions easy so that we don't need to have a lot of humans in the loop for at least low-risk decisions. So in this example, 3:47 a.m., a request came in for a wire. The agent looked at it, and it said, okay, so I'm checking all these things, and all these checkboxes are great. My confidence level is 90+%, so I am going to approve this wire. And it was for $4 million. So I did that. But when the people actually came in, the fraud team came in, and they looked at all the transactions. They had this workflow where when the people came in, they looked at all the transactions that were automatically approved. They realized that this was not really a trusted vendor that the wire should have been approved for. This was a duplicate record, which looked like an actual vendor, which was onboarded a few months ago, but there was a variation in data and the record that came in through the wire request for the agent. Now, in this case, the agent didn't really do anything wrong. The agent, which is the AI agent, it basically made a decision based off of the criteria and guardrails that had been implemented. But in reality, it didn't really take into consideration the fragmented data that existed, different sources that existed within the organization's data structures and the databases. So it basically made a decision which was built off of the wrong foundation, but the decision was right. So who was right and who was wrong? So one thing that they could have said, the AI is not working, which is what I see often companies do is, if I'm getting a lot of false positives, something is wrong with their AI model. But 90+% of the time, what I'm seeing is that there's nothing wrong with the model. It's really the foundation that was not really considered when AI was implemented or the agent workflow was introduced. And one of the key reasons for that is a lot of pressure on organizations to do something with AI. We want to be the first ones. We don't want to be last. We want to be competitive. So you got to do something with AI. So you, in a haste, you do this, and then what gets ignored? The foundational data piece, because people don't really want to touch the data complexities. It's too much time. You can't really see a good ROI directly out of it. So therefore, use whatever you got, maybe AI can help fix it. But that has never really happened so far. At least I haven't seen it happen so far. So here's the thesis for this talk that I want to build this around, which is most AI failures in production are not model failures. They are identity failures. And what do we mean by identity? We'll explain the terminology in a couple of slides down. But this really just means that the model itself may be doing what you expect it to do. The algorithm is doing what it's supposed to do. The problem lies somewhere else. And oftentimes, that problem is the identity or the entity. So there's various acronyms for it: identity, entity, data, golden record, whatever you want to call it. But it's really just the ability to bring multiple sources together. So you can say that this record or this decision I'm making on Gurpinder, this is the right Gurpinder I'm making a decision on, right? And you take into consideration what's in the CRM system, what's in the ERP system, what's in the data warehouse. You're not just looking at it in one fragment, but instead you're looking at it holistically. And that's what identity management and identity layer does for you. So again, I want you to remember this, and I want you to really feel, at least for those of you that joined this session, I'm sure you're doing something with AI or interested in it or want to do something. So just remember that. And the reason for that is I really want you to feel the weight of this statement. And why do I want to do that? It's because when I talk to C-level executives and I give them this statement, the weight is often on our AI is not working, so something's wrong with AI. And it's never really that maybe something's wrong with their data foundation. And when you put a weight on something, so in this case, if you put the weight on there's something wrong with identity, not AI, then you're going to focus on that piece. That's just natural. That's the way our brain works. When you emphasize something, it wants to gravitate toward finding a solution for that. So that's what I tell teams that I work with as well, is that when you are trying to troubleshoot and do something, focus on the foundation first before you go look at the AI. Because the algorithms are easy to troubleshoot. It's the data foundation that is often hard to troubleshoot and fix. So therefore, remember this thesis as we talk about this. So why are we talking about it now? It's because over the last few years, our race has been, let's gather as much data as we can. Storage is cheap, so we can gather as much information as we can. Everything that we touch turns into data. That's the world that we live in today. So this year I think is the time where we have to be smart about it. And then there's a lot of research that has been done to prove that point. And two of those is what I'm showing here on the screen here. So there are two curves that seem to be sort of emerging here. One of them is the adoption curve for AI, and one of them is the failure curve for AI. So according to Gartner, 40% of of organizations are trying to do something with AI, or specifically with agentic AI. And the mandate is by the end of 2026, you got to do something with it. And Gartner predicts that 40% of organizations are going to do something with AI in the year 2026. Now, on the same note, the research also shows that 40% of those organizations that are doing something or are going to do something with AI, they're going to abandon it by 2027. Now, why is that the case, right? Well, it is the case because people are not going to see the ROI. The boards are not going to continue to fund these projects if you are not showing them ROI and true revenue or efficiencies. They're going to pull the funding back, just like what happened with the master data management platforms. Initially, when MDM came in, they got the funding. It was okay for the first 1 or 2 years, but then when the project dragged on, it got pulled, and people couldn't do anything about it, and that's why the failure rate of MDM was around 60%. The same kind of stats is what we are seeing in the market as well. So the adoption is soaring, cancellations are soaring, and the gap between them is really the identity and the quality of data that is feeding these AI systems. So we're going to talk about how do we fix that. So in this case, how many of you in this room are in the data governance side? Anyone? Okay, a couple. So you might wonder, well, if we have good data governance structure in place, shouldn't this fix the problem? It should to some extent, and it is, but you have to look at it from the point of view of what exactly is governance doing, right? So you have a strong governance in place, which is going to help you with quality, right? So is my source giving me the quality of data that I'm expecting according to my policies? So you can monitor that, and if there's things happening, then you can say, okay, that source is giving me wrong quality or not the level of quality that I need. So you may go back to that subject matter expert and say, okay, what's happening with your source? You could have stewards in place that are trying to go through when there's variation, they can try to fix it. But you can look at this list here on the screen. I don't need to read every single one of them. On the left-hand side, you see what the governance team has built. And it's working. But what is not working, especially in the context of AI, is what's on the right-hand side. Because when you look at data governance, it's not really looking at every single system and saying, is this customer record coming from this data set the same as that data source? Because governance is about policies and procedures and quality, but this is more around bringing data together. The fragments that exist, how do we bring them together to see a holistic view? In the MDM terminology, how do we make sure that we have a golden record which is consistent across the enterprise? So it's not doing that. The vendor master with active duplicate records. So if you have duplicates in the vendor master, then you're going to be faced with, when you're cutting checks to them, and the wire example that we talked about in the beginning, you're going to come across issues like that. So there's so many things here, especially the last one, which is the no metric for identity quality at AI routine, right? So when AI is making a decision, if you don't have anything in the policy around quality of data that goes into that AI decision-making process, then there's no governance program that could really fix that, right? And governance teams they don't have unlimited resources. Governance teams are very tight on resources to begin with, and now you're layering on top of this a lot of real-time requirement for AI to work on the governance team, which again is not going to work unless we do something to figure out how do we close that identity gap for it to work effectively. And to make it crystal clear, if you're still not sure whether it makes sense or not for what I've been talking about, that why identity is essential here, this is another example that I wanted to share to make it a bit more concrete. So in this example, it was an insurance carrier. Their details have been anonymized from privacy perspective, but basically what was happening in this case is that they had one customer. That one customer held 3 policies. So let's say auto, home, and a small umbrella policy. Each policy was sold through a different channel. Let's say an agent, online, e-commerce, and a broker. So they were sitting in all these 3 different systems. And what they decided to do was use a pricing agent to help the team really manage renewals and retention. So the pricing agent, basically, it went in and it looked at what it was supposed to do. It looked at, okay, so I'm going to look at this customer. I only have access to this particular system, so I don't know what else this customer has. So I'm going to look at just the auto, right? And it looked at it, and it said, based on their driving patterns and things like that, I'm going to increase the premium by 12%. And then it looked at the other one, and it's going to say, well, I see duplicate records with 2 recent claims, so therefore there might be some issue here, so I'm going to flag it for fraud and also increase premium and also send it for a review. And then the third system agent said, okay, so I see they might be at a flight risk because I don't see a lot of interaction here with us, so I'm basically going to flag it as at risk, so I'm going to be proactive and give them like a really good pricing discount to win them back. So the same customer gets 3 different offers. How many of you have come across this? I have. So from here, I live in Ontario, and I often get these. I have multiple services with one of our key telecom providers, and I often get fragmented information from them. And my first question to them is, do you realize I'm a customer? And then they hang up the phone because they use call centers. So that's exactly what happened here. They didn't really understand that this was a customer using multiple services, so therefore they gave them different offers. The customer obviously wasn't happy, and then when they escalated it, then they had to go through all this peeling the onion, and then it said, okay, well, we made mistakes, but now we have to honor what we offered as a win back for the last option, but we're going to adjust the other 2 items for you. That happened in this customer's case, but multiply that with hundreds and thousands of other customers. So this was a nightmare for this insurance company to manage because the agent did that not for just this customer, this was repeated for multiple customers. They lost a lot of money, they lost a lot of, a lot of customers because they weren't happy with the service, and this could have been avoided. So this is the solution that I have seen work really well. I want to start with the bottom, the orange layer, which is the identity intelligence. So identity intelligence, just to define, it's a layer which is continuously updated. This is the foundation that your AI, your other programs should be built on top of. What often I have seen happen is when agents are built, they're built on some sort of like another table or warehouse or something underneath it versus the actual intelligence layer. The intelligence layer's whole function is to bring everything together so that it could inform and it could fuel the AI agents that need access to real insight and real data. So it starts there. Entity resolution is a process which is a part of this identity intelligence. In order to create that intelligence, we need to resolve entities. Entities, by that definition, could be a record. It's a real thing that you're dealing with. So in the insurance example that we talked about, an entity would be their policyholder, right? In another example, it could be a customer, it could be a vendor, it could be a supplier. So anything that is real that you're dealing or doing something with, that would be your entity. So the entire process would be starting with entities, resolving those entities to bring them together, and then creating an identity intelligence layer, which would then fuel the decisions and the AI that you're layering on top of that. And this is how we will close that gap that we talked about, that existed between the agent and the foundational layer. Once we do that, then it makes it easy for us to move between these quadrants that I'm showing here. So I do a lot of research and I write papers, and one of the things I like doing is 2x2s. So in this 2x2, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that on the vertical axis that you're seeing in front of you, you're basically looking at how much AI capability you have actually deployed. So you can think of this as a maturity curve or a maturity matrix. So on the vertical, you're seeing how many AI capabilities do you actually have deployed. And then on the horizontal, you're looking at the identity quality or entity quality. And the 4 quadrants that get created is the top the quadrant that you see in red is the quadrant where you're deploying a lot of AI, but your maturity when it comes to having the right foundation or identity or entity layer is very low. And I would argue that if you are in this particular, this is the worst quadrant to be in, even worse than the lower quadrant, which is stalled. So the stalled or status quo or stalled quadrant is when you are just status quo. You're not implementing any AI, but you're not looking at any identity infrastructure either. So you're just basically doing business as usual. And then as you move more toward the right, which is you're becoming a bit more mature, and then you recognize that you need to get your foundational data right. So you're emphasizing a lot of that. This is the right thing to do. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. That's the right move. But then eventually the idea is that you want to move up in that same quadrant, and you want to go to that green zone, which is the compounding ROI. Once you have the right data infrastructure, the foundational layer, and you have the right AI sitting on top of it, you're going to start seeing the multipliers from ROI. This is where the business case proves itself to the board that we need to continue investing in our AI capabilities because it is generating revenue, it is reducing redundancies, it's creating efficiencies. So that's where you want to be. But most enterprises, believe it or not, still sit in the top left. 98% of organizations that I've spoken to over the last 6 to 8 months fall within that red quadrant. And the simple reason is data is too complex to manage. We don't have the funding and the resources to invest in it. We would rather invest in AI, so we're going to do that and hope that technology can help us solve both problems. But it doesn't work like that. You have to put the grunt work in, which is why what I am starting to see and also recommending to organizations is that if you are undertaking AI initiatives and you're making a business case for it, this is your perfect time to include data management as a part of that business case. Because the chances of AI business case to be approved are much higher than the business case for just data management. So make it a project, a holistic project, versus break it up into two separate initiatives or projects. And we're seeing some success in that. So how do we move past that? How do we move from red to green? We already talked about it, but just to reiterate and repeat what I said, it is to look at the foundation, invest some time and effort into getting the foundation right so that we can easily say that our AI is now working. It has reduced false positives. Our customers are happier, customer satisfaction has gone up, and we're seeing some return from the investment. One way to do that is the architectural shift, right? So how do we get to that mindset and the identity, closing that identity gap? It's the architectural shift. So moving from what was there on the left, which is before identity lived at the bottom of a pipeline. Sources flow in batch. There were dedupes that we were dealing with. There were cleanups that happened overnight. Sometimes some customers do it on a weekly basis. They don't even do it overnight. The warehouse refreshes are not as fresh as they need to be for the agents to work, and the AI agents are working on data which is stale by days, sometimes by weeks. So when you do that, the nature of data is it keeps changing. If you don't really keep up with it, your AI is going to feed off whatever data is there. So there's no surprise, or there shouldn't be any surprise. But when you change that mindset and you go to this architectural shift on the right-hand side, which is after, you are now looking at identity as a runtime, real-time layer for the AI agents to feed off of. The sources fan into a real-time entity resolution hub. The hub maintains a continuous resolved entity graph, which then AI agents can query, and then they can directly feed off of it to make a decision on data which is as fresh as it can be. So the confidently wrong decisions will get eliminated and turn into confidently right decisions eventually. The difference isn't just speed. The difference is shape. You've gone from a pipeline to a hub, right? Identity stopped being a stage in your data process, but instead it became a service your AI calls now. So it becomes kind of like an enterprise level service that different tools, applications, and AI can call and feed off of. So we're coming to the end of our time. So there are 4 things that you will see as a result of it. I only have a couple slides left once you do that. So once you make this shift, 4 things move all at once, right? So these are just happening at the same time. And I'm going to be very quick with it because we could actually spend a whole talk on each of these. So the first one is going to be the risk decisions get sharper. What that means is your KYC, sanction screening, fraud, supplier risk, all of those entity resolution problems, pretending to be model problems, will get fixed. And then you're going to start seeing reduction in false positives. The second is going to be customer experience. So if you're using agentic AI for customer experience, sales, and marketing type of things, you're going to see better, a bit more coherent decisioning here, and you're going to see your pricing, claims, retention, sales, and marketing, all of those capabilities will become a bit more efficient, and you can trust the agents. So the human in the loop will sort of get reduced, and the agents can be trusted because you can see the level of confidence that they're working with. Third is the ROI starts compounding, so you'll see results getting generated by ROI because it's working off of the right approach, and the right ROI is being generated by going to the right foundation. And this is where this is what the CFOs and the CEOs care the most about, because they want to see what kind of money are you saving and what kind of revenue are you generating as a result of it. And finally, just one thing to take back. So especially if you're looking at AI initiatives, or if you're looking at something already in place, 3 things you can take back and ask your team. The first one is going to be, what percentage of your AI-driven decisions act on complete, correctly resolved identity? The first question. Because this is where you really sort of like peel the onion, and you're going to go back and see, okay, so if my AI agent is expected to do this, and I'm going to just one data source, Is that going to be enough? Do I need to consider this second data source, which has more information about this agent, about this customer, that the agent might need to make an effective decision? So when you do that, that conversation helps you get to that right architectural. What is the cost in money, regulatory exposure, threat of one wrong agent decision in your highest volume workflow? And believe it or not, in regulated industries, the cost could be in millions of dollars. And when you get audited in that scenario, you can't just say, well, the agent did that, right? That's not sufficient. You have to prove what happened and why it happened. And then who in your organization owns identity quality at AI runtime? I think this is the most important one. Once you identify the first, the third question is the most important, because then you can basically put the governance, the policies and procedures in place which will ensure that the identity layer is properly governed and right when the AI agent needs to make a decision. So with that, I'm going to skip over this one. I want to thank you for your time, and I would say that your AI agents will be confident. It's really dependent on the identity gap. If you're able to close that gap, you will see confident and right decisions. But if you're unable to close it, you will see confident and wrong decisions. They'll continue to flow. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, we have 1 minute, 14 seconds, or we are in the exhibit hall as well, so you can find me. I'm happy to chat about it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great session. We've all taken so much learnings from you today. And yeah, if you do have any questions, you know where to find them. So see you around in the conference.